The House Democrat Caucus is doing this press conference because we are concerned, again, about the direction education is taking, particularly the direction the State Department of Education is taking and the state school superintendent. We again want to point out the closed door, backdoor tactics and non-transparent tactics that the state school superintendent is using in trying to circumvent and even dismantle House rules that help us in governing and running our state schools.
As a state representative for the district, I feel like I often speak on education issues for our constituents. And my concern and my desire to express to you today is a concern that maybe that voice of my constituents will be lost if certain rules are made and put into place. First of all, I'd like to address the question of what I ran into in discovering that there was 400 pages of prior rules on curriculum, the pass or priority academic skills that I found on the website that was identified as revoked or deleted. Very briefly, what happened in that deletion was to form and create a policy that would create a council, a voluntary citizens council that would allow for the input into the State Board of Education, the State Department of Education rules on curriculum. And that concerned me, having worked through the past objectives, and I know they're always in transition since 1990, but are we ready to create an advisory committee or council that oversees that? And the other thing I would like to share, and I almost quote on this, is the rules that are coming up and being proposed before the State Board of Education, and then if they adopt, will go to the House Administrative Rules Committee, and that House Rules Committee will then either let them go on and become the rule of law or else challenge them through a House Joint Resolution. But here are the rules, the summary of the rule, and that is the proposed rule provide for implementation of a voluntary advisory council to provide the State Department of Education with recommendations for revision of the academic content and process standards prior to drafting proposed standards. That is the legislative role, is to provide that input. And within that context, that is why I am here to talk with you, address questions with you about these rules that will bypass the legislature. And I know right now, and I have heard people say, well, we're not really deleting the past objectives. Well, as a legislator, when I see lines through a sentence, it means it's been deleted. And when I see the word revoked, I think that's kind of like doing away with. So what's going to happen if they're done away with, and that is the purpose of that council, is to provide input to the State Department of Education for those changes. And that's the concern, because that is usually the legislature's role.
I'd like to talk to you about the dismantling of what I thought was the most groundbreaking, earth-shattering legislation in education that Oklahoma's ever seen. And that was the bill proposed by then Speaker Steve Lewis and championed by then Governor Henry Bellman, 1017. We've tweaked it over the last few years, the last 20 years or so, but has 1017 been revoked? No. 1017, which addressed teacher pay, class size requirements, curriculum requirements, and legislative review and oversight, and a host of others, has not been revoked. It's still the law. The curriculum requirements that are in the law are still the law and must be followed. It's been my understanding that if the curriculum is revoked, then a revised curriculum should immediately be approved. Or if we stand the chance of being out of compliance with the state and federal mandates. During the past, revisions of the state curriculum, a new revised version, were immediately ready for the board approval. I see none of that ready today. So we would, in essence, be out of compliance. We wouldn't have any state curriculum to teach or to assess. There would be no ACE legislation, no child left behind, no reading sufficiency requirements. But folks, that's not the most troubling purposes of these rule changes that I see. But the legislature being written out as the oversight and review process of the curriculum is the most devastating part of the rule changes. House Bill 1017 calls for legislative review. It has checks and balances it requires the State Department to go by, no matter which party is in control. The new core curriculum is not scheduled to be implemented until 2014-15, so why are we deleting it, revoking it, if you will, today? Do it this time next year, I could understand that. But why now? I'll tell you why. It's an attempt to take complete and total control of the public education by one entity. The state superintendent, with the help of a few, select the state school board members now who answer to the state superintendent and to the governor. They're proposing, as Representative Kennedy said, to set up a voluntary citizens oversight committee who answers to the state superintendent and the Board of Education, with no oversight from anyone else except the state superintendent of education. My question is, aside from the environmental impact that we would have by printing all the pages of the curriculum for the legislators to read, what's the benefit of leaving us out of the approval process? The answer is control. Who would be responsible for the curriculum review other than the State Department? No one. Who would be the new check and balance system for the education agency? Apparently the Voluntary Citizens Committee. We're not ready to revoke the past objectives unless we have something ready to stick in its place. You wouldn't tear down your house before you built a new one to live in. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. This system is in place already. We don't need to change it by revoking without having something in place. We don't need to allow the total control to go to one person who apparently thinks that there are no rules written for her anyway. I would strongly suggest that you look at what they're trying to do here. I don't agree with it, and I don't believe if you look closely enough, you will either.